Yo, what's poppin' out of cons? It's your team leader, the Random Gamer, here with the first episode of SRN Savage Random News. Today's subjects are the research section of that champ from the Lake Champlain monster is a plesiosaur, and the second subject is the some events going on in our local area, and then the Na'vi word of the week. So starting off with the intro of the first section of this video is Lake Champlain. The lake between New York and Vermont, has some mysteries to it. One of these mysteries is a large creature seen by many, which nobody really knows what it is. And in this section, we are going to go into what it is and what I believe it is. The people of Lake Champlain has named it Champ or Champy, depending on what you name it in your area. And scientists and cryptozoologists and some witnesses are more recently getting into and getting the idea of what this creature could be, with some impressive evidence that shows that it could be a creature from the past that survived for 65 million years. The Lake Champlain monster Champ is more than likely a plesiosaur. Now let's get into some history of the sightings of Champ. So it is important to know the history of all the witnesses of Champ. The first sightings was by the Native Americans of the United States of America, before it was discovered by the first European to discover and name the lake of Lake Champlain. The Native Americans in the early years of the 1700s described Champ, as what we call it now, as a large serpent-like or snake-like water creature. And Samuel D. Champlain saw it himself one or two times, and which he did not think it was a giant lake serpent or snake. He thought it was a fish. In the mid 1800s, Captain Crum was on a boat called a scow in Bulwaga Lake or Bay. That previous Thursday, when he reportedly saw a black monster that was 187 feet long, with a head that resembled a seahorse, 3 teeth, eyes that are the color of a peeled onion, had a white star in its head, with a red belt around its neck. Not really sure what he meant by red belt, but that reared up more than 15 feet out of the water. Which, that is impressive level of detail that this man was able to recall, because considering the fact that he was 600 feet away from this creature. Moving on to the early 1870s, there was a lot of Champ sightings at that point. There was one sighting was there was a railroad crew that saw the head of a massive serpent in Lake Champlain, one that had bright silvery scales that shimmered in the sun. After that, both the men and the creature decided to part ways and go opposite directions. Then later in that same year, there was a sighting by Clinton County Sheriff Mooney. Who reported that he saw a massive snake or water serpent that was 25 to 35 feet long. Then a month after that, there was an encounter with Champ by a steamship, the WB Eddy, running into it, and which almost tipped over the boat, says tourists who were riding the WB Eddy. Then in the mid 1900s, there was a group of sightings by passengers. There was a sighting by passengers on the SS Ticonderoga, who reported to have seen the creature. Sightings became more frequent in the late 1900s with photos by those who have witnessed Champ. The total of sightings in the early 1990s was 180, with around 600 people reporting to have seen Champ all over Lake Champlain. And it got to a point where young kids riding the Grand Isle Ferry would go outside of their parents' vehicles with their parents, and they would look and they would hope to see a sighting of Champ. And I myself was one of those people when I was young that would look for Champ, because I used to call out to him, sing Champ, it's okay, I won't hurt you. And yeah, I was a child back then, so I didn't know better. Anyways, one day in the early 2000s, in one summer, there were 3 sightings, which led to a special on Discovery Channel called America's Loch Ness Monster, which covered every and all things about Champ that we know so far. And although there are many who are skeptical of Champ, both states, New York and Vermont, have protected the Champ by law for the case that Champ is real, which I believe he is real, but it is not a lake monster. It is a prehistoric marine reptile called a plesiosaur or plesiosaurus. And then the source from that information is from www.lakechamplainregion.com/heritage/champ. Next up is the support section of this segment. In the first part of the supporting section, we have which I have a video. I found the video of this. A man who was out boating, minding his own business. He was just going boating, and all of a sudden he saw this creature come up to the surface right next to his boat, and he records the whole thing. It comes up near the surface and then swims away. So when it swims away, and when it comes up and swims away, you can see a head, a longish neck, and a body, and at least one fin. I will show you this clip now.
The sightings of a watery monster in upstate New York's Lake Champlain have gone on for decades. But some truth about America's answer to the Loch Ness Monster may finally be revealed on a new videotape that purportedly shows the snake-like beast. Well, ABC's Jim Avila joins us now with more about the creature known as the Champ. Okay, you got our attention.
Okay, well, good morning, Robin. There is something in the water, a camera-shy, strange, wake-producing phenomenon. And now, to add fuel to the mystery up there, 2 respected, not crazy fishermen have videotaped something.
He is a local legend, Lake Champlain, New York's answer to the Loch Ness Monster, Champ. Inspiration for parade floats, T-shirts, keychains, minor league baseball team mascots, and yes, wild stories. This woman saw the monster 30 years ago.
Well, we saw the nose was probably about that big around.
And now, new exclusive video, obtained by ABC News, of something just under the surface, has brought Champ back into the news and back from the memory of Lake Champlain residents.
It looked like this, but the head looked just like the shape of a horse's head.
There have been grainy pictures before, and home video, too far away for any real chance to get a clear picture. There have been hundreds of sightings, sometimes more than a dozen a year. So you got this long list of names here. Who are these people? What do they think they've seen?
These are people who say they've seen something unusual in the lake, something with a large head, something with a hump, some sort of unusual life that shouldn't be there in Lake Champlain.
Reporter Laura McKinstry has been writing about Champ sightings for more than 20 years.
Best guess would be that it is some sort of creature that possibly should be extinct.
The Champ frenzy began in earnest in the mid-1800s when P.T. Barnum offered the audacious sum of $50,000 for Champ dead or alive. Hunters and fishermen came out of the woods, but fortunately, they never collected.
And the search is still on, which brings us to the latest sighting by a couple of respected upstate New York fishermen who on a summer afternoon last year captured something on their digital camera.
As big around as my thigh, I'd say.
It made my hair stand on end at the time. It just didn't fit anything, any kind of creature that I'd ever seen.
Now, these two guys are not crackpots. They've lived around Lake Champlain all their lives and were skeptical about the legend of Champ until they saw this mysterious wake. Unfortunately, their story is much more vivid than their video.
Boy, that looks like a serpent.
What we saw always stayed right on the surface, and parts of it would come above the water. The back, or the nose, or the head.
What in hell is that thing?
But Champ is camera shy, and the fishermen say this is the best picture they could get.
I'm 100% sure of what we saw. I'm not 100% sure of what it was.
The tape is authentic. Two retired FBI analysts reviewed it for ABC News.
I can't find anything in there that would suggest or indicate to me that this has been fabricated or manipulated in any way. However, there's no place in there that I can actually see an animal or any other type of object on the surface.
Just an odd wake that for now merely adds to the further mystery of Champ, a legend that swims just below the surface and just out of camera range.
So what is it? You know, and I think most researchers believe that it's probably a sturgeon of some kind, but the problem is that the fishermen say, who are very familiar with sturgeon and fish, that there aren't the right fins, no dorsal fin. They didn't see any fins at all. It looks more like a serpent. So there you go, more mystery.
Well, these not crazy fishermen, as you put them, they did see more than they got on tape. And
They were using a digital camera, and it couldn't penetrate through the surface. They claim, and you know, as we say, there's no evidence that they're lying, that they saw much more, that they saw something that was that wide and certainly 10 to 15 feet long. So who do you believe?
All right.
That's right.
All right, Jim, thank you. And you can see exclusive photos and videos of Champ at our website.
All right. That was the clip. I find that very compelling footage. And the fact that it was broadcasted on ABC News, which is one of the biggest news broadcasters in the U.S., is pretty significant. And because you wouldn't normally expect them to do a segment like that. So, but I find it pretty compelling that when you see the creature in there. So, moving on to the next compelling evidence that I have to show to you. A couple people who run a research initiative called Champ Search used an underwater microphone called a hydrophone and to listen to sounds underwater. And they were in an area of Lake Champlain called the Scotch Bonnet, which is a deeper part of the lake. So they did capture a sound, which I will play in a minute. The sound, it was like a very deep growl that you can hear, even though along with the sound of the water that they're in. So I will play the sound now. Alright, so that is not any sort of growl that I have ever heard from a creature that would be in those depths. Some people might think, oh, it's an alligator or a crocodile. They don't go that deep. They don't go deep in the water. They're usually in shallow, murky water, and Lake Champlain is a saltwater lake. So that wouldn't make any sense. And there's no fish or any marine creature that we know of that makes a growl like that. So what other could it be than a prehistoric creature that has evolved for many years. But I'll get more into my thoughts near the end. Now, for an opposing, we have, some might think that Champ is a fish. It's just a big fish that people have seen, and they've been saying that it's a serpent type creature, but really it's just a fish that would come up to the surface and then go back down. Which one of these people who thought this was Samuel D. Champlain, and he basically describes that there is a fish that the natives at that time called I'm probably not gonna say this right, but they called it the Shaoyusaro. I don't know if I'm saying that right, but he describes what historians think is a garfish, which have lived since the time of the dinosaurs. The species of the gar has lived since the time of the dinosaurs. So they've lived for as long since the time of the dinosaurs, which makes it's been called a living fossil because it lived during the time of the dinosaurs, which is fascinating. But it's not a fish because alligator gar, and they don't make growl sounds. They're not massive. The biggest one that you could ever you don't hear about gar getting 10 feet long or bigger. They can reach up to 10 feet, but no bigger. I've never heard of one that's any bigger than that. So that wouldn't make any sense. But who's to question D. Champlain? So I still believe that the Champ is a plesiosaurus. Then the second to last supporting is that they found sonar. So the people who did Champ Search, who got the deep growl in the lake, they took a boat with sonar, and they picked up they picked up something that was 20 feet long, and it is fascinating to see it because you can see a head, neck, body, and front fin type appendage, and then the rest of the body, which I will show you the clip of the sonar reading now. Alright. So, with that footage, can't be a fish that we know of. It's bigger. It's 20 feet long. There's no fish in Lake Champlain that is 20 feet long. So that footage also makes me believe even more. I don't know about you, but it makes me believe even more that it's got to be some sort of prehistoric marine creature like a plesiosaur or something. Now for the last opposing side, which is some people might think that Champ is a lake monster. Different from a prehistoric marine creature, different from a fish, it's a lake monster. And the reason why people might believe this is because of a legend that is reasonable. To me is very reasonable. It is the legend of Bulwaga, and the legend goes along the lines of this. A gentleman who was in love with Princess Bulwaga was punished by some sort of higher power and transformed into a lake monster when he fell into the lake after he drowned and killed Princess Bulwaga because he was angry at the fact that he loved her so deeply, but she did not like him back or have any sort of love interest in him and rejected him. So he decided to drown her, which when he fell into the lake, he got punished for that by some sort of higher power or something that made him be a lake monster in Lake Champlain for, at least in the Bay Area, for the rest of eternity and for till the end of time, basically. So, and to me, that legend is very reasonable. We've heard this story similar to that before, and the meaning of it we've heard a lot, and basically saying that there's always consequences for actions that you take, for actions that you do. And if you're not careful, you could end up with a very, very bad punishment. So, the source from that is www.pgfoundations.org/historic-markers/origin-of-champ for your source. And I'll have a works cited or credits type thing at the end of this too. Now, for my thoughts on the subject. To me, going off all the evidence that I have shown you and some of the things I've heard, I truly, truly believe, and I've always thought this, ever since I was a kid, ever since I learned of Champ and the descriptions of it and stuff, and some of the descriptions of it, I've always thought that it was a plesiosaurus. Reason being is because there's no way that it's any creature from this time. It's got to be something that survived the dinosaur age. And with the evidence, it supports that idea. But I now think that there's not one that survived for 65 years because there's no way that it could live for 65 million years and not have to continue its species by reproduction. So there had to be at least 2 or 3 of these marine creatures that evolved over 65 million years to evolve along with the environment, which that being Lake Champlain. And that's just my own theory. So here's a little background information. A plesiosaur is about 11 and a half feet long. That's how big they were, and back in the day. Now, they were underwater creatures. They never went on land or anything. They were only underwater. So the water during the great dinosaur extinction kind of protected them in a way. and after the extinction, they evolved to and thrived. With the very few that survived, they thrived and they evolved over 65 million years, and that is why I think that there's got to be like 2 variations of this evolved plesiosaur. There's one that's 11.5 feet, which is the smaller one that people see. Then the bigger one that people see, and the one that was seen on sonar, which is the 20-foot long one. That is a variation that can grow up to 25 feet long or bigger. We don't know because we haven't seen this creature, and they're surprisingly intelligent enough to know to avoid humans and cameras and the technology that we have. They just happen to get caught because they're like, oh, no, they think no one's there, and then somebody just happens to see it. It's amazing to me that we have a prehistoric creature that has evolved for 65 million years and is living and calls our Lake Champlain its home, which is amazing to me. Now, to close this segment of SGN off. So, in conclusion, Champ, the lake monster of Lake Champlain, is a plesiosaurus. The evidence that supports this is the following. The video that we saw that was on ABC, that was featured on ABC News, that supports the idea. One of the other evidence is the deep growl that Champ Search got on their hydrophone, and then the other one is the sonar footage of the 20-foot long creature that they got on sonar underwater that was like 42.5 feet underwater, but not directly on the surface, the bottom, but a little higher. So it was deep underwater where it was, and then in the lake. And then finally, my own common sense and logic on putting the pieces together and using common knowledge to piece together a theory that is very to me very plausible and based off the evidence that I showed to you. So thank you for watching and listening to this very long segment of this very long segment of SGN. Now we move on to the last 2 segments of SGN, and then we will close this video off. All right, now for what local events are coming up and happening this week. So, this week we have a few things going on. On Friday, December 2nd, there is a 34th annual Sparkle Village Craft Fair at the Harrodstown Hall. And then from 6 p.m. to 9 p.m. there is on the same day, there is a light up Saranac Lake with the lighted fire truck that drives through town. Then on Sunday, December 4th, we have from 7 a.m. to 1 p.m. we have the annual pancake breakfast at the Paul Smith Gabriel's Fire Department. So that is just a few events that are happening this week in our local area. Now for the final segment, the Na'vi word of the week. And since it's the first episode, I will give you two Na'vi words this time. But the next episodes will not have two Na'vi words. It'll have one Na'vi word per, or Na'vi phrase. So the first Na'vi word is galt'e. Galt'e, which translates to hello in Na'vi. So you can greet someone, and then if you would like, you can say the second Na'vi word I have for you guys is irayo. Irayo. Irayo, which means thank you in Na'vi. And fun fact, that Na'vi word was picked and chosen by the director of Avatar himself. So, and then the rest of the language was created by John Frommer, who is a linguist and was the one who created the Na'vi language for the movie. So that is the first episode of Savage Random News. I hope you enjoyed, and I will talk with you next time. Peace out.